Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where who let the dogs out? Paramount, that's who. And they wagged their tail all the way to the bank, with a $10 million gain for the sequel off of the 2021 movie, which was, of course, released during the pandemic. But this sequel had mass appeal across the board. Everybody loves dogs. Speaking of family IP, not to be underestimated, because with the three movies that hit this weekend, some of you guessed that Paw Patrol would be number one. I was also talking to some of my colleagues, and they noted that it was a sweet, hour and a half movie, so they could really stack those show times. And that's one of the benefits of having a shorter film. Anyway, Universal. Let's talk Trolls, which is coming up with a new entry. Universal was the first to send a major theatrical release straight to digital during the pandemic with Trolls World Tour. Remember that? Remember that that lightning? Well, everybody thought it was going to be a bomb, and it was a lightning bolt, as in a great idea. Because Universal became a digital trailblazer with Warner Brothers Discovery and then eventually Disney copying from the Universal playbook when it comes to digital strategy. Now everybody does what Universal pioneered. Although I wonder, only Universal released their revenue numbers, which are incredible. But, considering the other studios are sticking with it, they must be seeing a pretty penny as well. But Trolls Band Together is coming down the pipeline exclusively in theaters. It's back to a full theatrical release for Thanksgiving. And you might be like, Trolls, really? But it could be a very strong contender. And we'll see, it's coming out the week before Disney's Wish. That could actually end up being a pretty close fight. I mean, the new NSYNC song for this new movie, their first single in 21 years, is already out and topping the music charts. I got it, because they still got it. I like the whistling in the beginning. It's awesome. The rest of the song is pretty good, but that whistling really sells it. What's your favorite part if you got the song? I have Apple Music, so it doesn't cost me any extra money to pick it up. I don't know how musicians make money off that either. Streaming people in entertainment and movies and TV should look into that. Although I think it's a lower price point with songs. It's interesting though, although we know music people have been unhappy for a very long time. Why don't they go on strike? I don't know if they have a situation where they can. Some of them kind of threw the gauntlet down there, you might recall, for a while, but interesting. All right, so anyway, back to movies. Paramount is doing a nice job stacking up IP. In the past, they were the house that Transformers built, and Tom Cruise, although Tom Cruise, he's having a bit of a rough patch, boy. The bottom under Mission Impossible really fell out. But now they also have, they've had these things, but they have them all up and running again. Scream, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Paw Patrol, complete with Macy's Balloon, Martin Scorsese. Well, it's just this year, but that's a pretty nice feather in Paramount's cap. Dungeons and Dragons, tragically though, did not work out. I don't think I'd go back to that. It just was too expensive, and it just really didn't work out. And next year, Paramount will have new entries for their Quiet Place franchise, Sonic. They're trying to bring back Mean Girls. That was just announced as a theatrical release now. And Gladiator, right? They're also hoping to get more out of Nickelodeon with more SpongeBob and Avatar theatrical movies. Oh boy! Coming in 2025. Although, has it been too long for Avatar? If those animated movies are really something, maybe it's not. We got to see the quality of the films. Oh, if they're aged up original cast, I'm excited. All right, so Paramount, not bad. Nice job. I think they're shaping up to be a pretty good studio. That's a nice little machine they got humming there. But on the flip side, the original film, The Creator, Gareth Edwards, when I interviewed him, said he's not even trying to build an IP. But I bet you that Disney would have liked to have a new IP. In fact, to promote the film, they were sending out actors dressed as the robots to different sporting events and venues. And I thought that was pretty good. But it just didn't work out, because the film not only lost out to Saw X, which was always a possibility, but to lose out to Paw Patrol, that's embarrassing. I said in my review of The Creator that while Edwards was cooking when it came to the creative, he forgot to put his business hat on. And you can see that reflected in the box office. Now, some of you might be like, Grace, this makes me sick. Who cares about the box office? Gareth Edwards is an artist. Well, it's show business. And if this artist would like to work again, he should have focused a little bit more on the business. And I hope for you, when you're making your own plans to conquer Hollywood, you remember that it is show business. And even in the art world, by the way, don't kid yourself, that's a business as well. I mean, you could be famous after you die, maybe years later, and then even then, that is a business decision to discover your work and make money off of it. All right, so anyway, don't kid yourself about what's really going on here. Now, could maybe the creator, speaking of being discovered down the line, could it be discovered on digital and streaming? With these audience numbers, I don't think so. They should have had the Hollywood ending. Just as I said, it was right there. The producers didn't insist, and they should have. They really let Gareth Edwards down. And again, some of you might be like, I'm disgusted again, Grace, because Gareth Edwards should be able to have the ending that he wants. But how would he like to have a successful movie with good audience scores? I think if he'd had the Hollywood ending, he would have had better audience scores. So that's just something you should think about. I mean, you can roll the dice, and maybe you'll get an audience that does respect your ending. But, I mean, I told you, I respected it, but it should have been the other way. It was a major mistake. Hindsight's 2020. But that's what the producer is there for. They really represent the business aspects of the product. And that's why a very good movie has a very strong relationship between the director and the producer. Watch The Offer about the making of The Godfather. I'm begging you, it's such a good show. It's not only wildly entertaining, but it will remind you or teach you, if you don't know in the first place, about how Hollywood works. Even today, there's a core of Hollywood that will always remain the same. All right, so the creator skewed shockingly male. 71%! Ladies didn't have no interest in this movie. My God. And the diversity demos weren't great either, by the way, with John David Washington getting little support from the black community. Of course, the star gets support from every demographic. But, you got to have your corner to back you up. Like Equalizer 3 starring Papa Washington, 31% black audiences. I mean, it matters. So who is this floppo really going to hurt? Well, luckily the movie cost just $80 million to make, so Disney's just going to shrug and go, we knew Gareth Edwards was a problem. Why did we do it to ourselves? But maybe, by the way, speaking of the budget, if they'd added another $20 million in there, they could have gotten a big name attached and made a little bit more money. I mean, how about made some money? And gotten maybe better audience scores. So yeah, the person who's going to take the biggest hit here by far is John David Washington. And in comments online, I was perusing the comments to see what the audience reaction was. So the comments on my review, ones I saw on Twitter, in the Rotten Tomato audience reviews section, I was surprised that many people were saying John David Washington was either keeping them away from the film, or if they did go and see it, they simply do not care for his work. So he is a problem for a movie's appeal. And this isn't great for Gemma Chan either, by the way, but her career is already stalled thanks to Eternals. As for Gareth Edwards, I sure do hope he can make a movie for $30 million or maybe even $10. His first film was made for $4.5, because I don't see him getting studio work again anytime soon. This was his third strike, and this time he even got to do it his own way, but I guess that's a very good way to go out if you have to go out. But also maybe a wake-up call. A wake-up call not only to Gareth Edwards, but I hope to other filmmakers out there, so they don't make this mistake the first time, right? It's important. An important thing in life is not only to learn from to learn from your own mistakes, but to learn from other people's mistakes so that you don't make them in the first place. All right, I botched that advice up, but I hope you heard it. All right, so anyway, maybe this will be a wake-up call for Gareth Edwards, that his way needs some adjustments, right? Put that business hat on. There ain't no shame in it. There ain't no shame in your movie actually making money and getting high audience scores. But I wouldn't throw Gareth Edwards away. I think he's still a perfectly good director. So I would maybe put him on a streaming show. I would say there he could use his excellent and innovative directorial skills, and maybe not direct every episode, but have him direct a couple. And also I'd be interested in hearing some of his ideas, because I think he has incredible ideas. Some of the ideas in The Creator are fascinating and just, in my opinion, slam dunks. But let someone else do the writing and shape the overall product, who would have known to cast better and to have the Hollywood ending. I was right there! As I said in my review, that's what makes it particularly frustrating. It was there. The movie did not have to be substantially reworked to do that. Another 10 to 15, maybe just another 10 million to reshoot the ending, quite frankly. Didn't they test this thing? I think they would have saw in the audience scores that this was not going to be this was not going to be well received by some audience members. All right, so Saw X, it did okay. Interestingly, opening where the first one did, but that was 20 years ago. And so with inflation, it's just cute. You're like, oh, that's adorable. You opened where the very first film did back in 2004, but we still have a problem. But you did put a smile on my face for a minute. But you know what? So, I wouldn't throw Saw out either. It's still, I think, a strong brand. I'd maybe give it a breather and then send that to streaming as well. But on the flip side, maybe Lionsgate can just keep pumping these movies out because like so many horror films, they are cheap to make. This cost just $13 million for this gore fest. So when all is said and done with theatrical, digital, and streaming, Lionsgate will probably, I think, almost for sure turn a profit. And once again, Latino audiences supercharged another horror film. Saw X skewed male as well, but reasonably so, and young with an overwhelming 70% in the 18 to 34 range. As for the rest of the box office, I gotta say, look at the Nun go! Even with Saw X entering the marketplace, her sequel still fell just 45% in its fourth weekend and has made more money theatrically than the last 3 Conjuring movies, the last 3 entries in the franchise, worldwide as well. The Conjuring franchise still has a very strong pulse. Yay, James Wan! And Fathom Events is back in the mix with yet another faith-based entry. Talk about a little machine that's up and running, right? This time, a movie about the Robertson family from the Duck Dynasty show. It's a fictional, it's an autobiographical movie. It's not a documentary, but it's their story. People came out. Fathom plays these films, by the way, interestingly, not just movie theaters, but in churches as well, as long as they're 30 miles or so from a movie theater, because those are theatrical zoning rules. You might, for instance, on 42nd Street, there are 2 movie theaters across the street from each other, the AMC and the Regal. A movie can't play at both. It has to pick one because, to make sure that movie theaters get a fair chance to get customers at their theater, that's how they do it. There are zoning rules for where a movie can play, and you can't double book a film too close to each other. So as long as that church is 30 miles away from a movie theater, it could play this film, The Blind, which I'm not quite sure what that has to do with the Robertson family. But did any of you see this? Was it good? But this is another, and I'm not sure, by the way, if the church box office is included in this number. But no matter what, it's a sweet setup for Fathom and another solid showing at the box office for faith-based entertainment. 5th place. 5th place. Dumb Money wishes it had that kind of audience. Finally going fully wide in its 3rd weekend, they're only at 7.3 million in 3 weeks. Oh boy. Somebody's going to get a stern talking to with that studio. This is Sony, I believe. So I think this release strategy was the real problem. It was 50% the release strategy, because once you missed it for the first 2 weekends, why not just wait for it digital at that point? They made their audience wait. And I was going to go, but I told you there was a problem with the theater I was going to go to, so I had to leave, actually. And now I'm just like, forget it. I'll just watch it on digital. And it did look like a digital movie very much in the first place. So that's 50% of the problem. Then the other 50%, Mr. Paul Dano, I'm sorry to say. An incredibly talented actor. I love the guy. But he can join John David Washington as actors who simply cannot sell a movie ticket. Also, maybe I would factor this in as well. I'm curious what you think, because I know some of you saw the movie and enjoyed it. Why do you think it's not doing well? And if you haven't seen it yet, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for digital? Are you ever going to see it? Are you just out at this point? Were you never in? But anyway, inside baseball movies can have a tough time. Business movies can have a difficult time. And also with this one in particular, who wants to watch other people get rich on a fluke and then lose it all? And the movie's takeaway, it appears, I haven't seen it yet, is that the system won't change anyway. So they're just telling you about something that's super annoying, and is that really entertainment? There wasn't even like horrible ramifications for any of the bad guys. Well, you can only say bad guys because there were no ramifications. All right, so yeah. Expendables 4 tumbled, a not at all surprising 69% in its second weekend, as everyone would rather just forget it ever existed in the first place, including the people I think, well, they got paid, so they don't care. Barbie is, I think that's the real attitude of Statham and Stallone these days. Did they get paid? Yes, they did. On to the next project. Barbie is almost out of the top 10 after an incredible historic run, while Oppenheimer has fallen out of the top 10. Oppie isn't going to make it to $1 billion. I bet you guys, what did I bet, like $20 I get to keep it? But you guys, there ain't no shame in coming this close to $1 billion. Yeah, we tip our hat to Oppie, Christopher Nolan, and its fandom, because that is very impressive for the kind of movie that it is. Next up for Barbenheimer, awards season. Ooh, but as I've started to point out, this year's awards season is suddenly getting surprisingly competitive. I do think Barbenheimer will rack up the nominations, but I think it's going to be harder to win some of those suckers than they thought. All right, now let's head over to streaming, starting with Nielsen per usual for about a month ago. And oh boy, after a hopeful debut, Ahsoka got hit real hard in her second week. Fully out of the overall top 10, whereas last week she was in 5th place. And on the OG chart, the originals, she slipped from 2nd place to 5th. Oh my goodness. Just as I knew, sometimes, Mario, sometimes I have a blind spot. But I knew Gareth Edwards forgot to put his business hat on, and I continue to feel that the Filoni fandom, while passionate, is just too darn small. And is this just a Star Wars problem, or is it some also Disney Plus problem, right? We'll find out soon with Loki Season 2, where we're also curious if there's an overall Marvel problem. If that show doesn't do well, it's a bigger problem. It's not the content. We can start talking Loki Season 2 early this week. Social media embargo lifts Monday at midnight. I have my tweet ready to go. And the review embargo Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then, of course, I'll be breaking down the episodes when they drop Thursday night. Oh, it's so exciting. All right, well, I hope it is. I hope I was excited about the creator, but I think Loki has its business hat on. Oh, we'll talk about it. We're going to talk about it. All right, but rejoice, One Piece fans. Your show debuted on the chart quite nicely. 2nd place overhaul behind Juggernaut Suits. Still nobody can top that thing. And 1st place on the originals chart. With movies, Adam Sandler's daughter, with her first full week on Nielsen, the movie came out on a Friday, she made the overall chart and she ruled the movies chart. But the movies chart in general continues to be pretty sad with shockingly low numbers. But this is great for the studios actually, as most viewers are willing to buy and rent these movies on digital instead of waiting even longer to watch the movies at no extra cost on the studio's respective streaming services. And extra money is extra money. If it's not at the multiplex, they'll take it at the digital purchase point. On Netflix's charts, Haley Lou Richardson is still number 1, a very soft number 1, but number 1 is number 1. And the new Spy Kids could not dethrone her. Is the Spy Kids franchise played out, or is this Zachary Levi's fault? I would suspect both. I also think it's skewed a little too young. Those are some very young Spy Kids. That's for babies. And as you can see, a lot of recent hits came out to Netflix for September and are doing very well. Like Crawl. Crawl was great. I saw that in theaters. It was excellent. If you need something to watch, I recommend Crawl. With shows, the final season of Sex Education is going out on a high note. It's a solid number 1 debut. And people do love their true crime, with the new Murdoch Murders series, parts 1 and 2, both in the chart on the top 10. One Piece, a month out, is still doing solid numbers. This is good. Again, it's not a Wednesday or a Stranger Things, but it's definitely a hit for Netflix. And when you look at the hours, if this was Netflix's old metrics, it would be number 2 on this chart, interestingly. But, Netflix is like, we got to protect ourselves against residuals. We're going with these new metrics. That's why they switched from hours to views. All right, over on iTunes, that's why these numbers are actually coming down to earth and being somewhat more realistic. All right, and that's good. We don't want inflated numbers. It's not good. We want to know how stuff's performing. Then over on iTunes, Blue Beetle couldn't dethrone Barbie, but who cares? They're both Warner Brothers. And look at that, Gran Turismo is right behind in 3rd place. These are good movies, no hard feelings as well. And pre-pandemic, audiences would have seen all of them in theaters. Just more evidence as to how the business is changing. Direct-to-digital muzzle. Aaron Eckhart, what are you doing? Are you really at the Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis stage already? Well, new release My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, new digital release, isn't garnering a lot of interest in this space. Although indie comedy Bottoms, still in the top 10 in its 2nd weekend, so good for that movie. As for this coming weekend, get ready for more horror with The Exorcist Believer. Jason Blum didn't want to come out so close to Saw 10, but he wanted to also get the heck out of the way of Taylor Swift, who comes out now the weekend after. A24 is also releasing this movie in limited, whose name I cannot say. And look at this, The Nun 2 is hitting digital on Tuesday. Wow, even while it's still doing well at the box office. Maybe that's because of The Exorcist debut. The Nun's like, let's get out of here. We'll be the cheaper option on digital, and so maybe people will just wait for The Exorcist and check out The Nun 2 now. There are some people who are doing that. Are you going to do that? As for streaming movies, Paramount Plus is ready for Halloween already, with Monster High 2 on Thursday and the new Pet Sematary movie on Friday, which they seem to have not advertised at all. I mean, I know actors aren't available still, but I haven't seen anything. But Pet Sematary is a big brand. And Netflix has their sexy work thriller, Fair Play, with Alden Ehrenreich. You know what? I'm just so glad he's working. Let him do what he needs to do. There's a joke in there, but I can't make it. All right, so anyway, with series, Thursday is huge. With the return of Lupin on Netflix, our Flag Means Death on Max, let's see if that blows up, because by the time the first season was over, it had quite the fan base. And then, another pirate show, by the way. And then, of course, Loki on Disney Plus at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, you're not going to want to miss that. Tune in. So many surprises. You're not going to want them spoiled for you. And again, that's all I can say until tomorrow at midnight. And with the WGA strike over, Kimmel, Colbert, Fallon, and Myers are all returning to late night starting tomorrow, whether you want them to or not. And John Oliver, the fifth member of Strike Force 5, I was like, who's the fifth? Oh yeah, John Oliver. Well, he's back tonight. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what do you think of how original movies like The Creator and Dumb Money are doing against established franchises? Is it the fault of Philistines, or is it the movie's own fault? And then how about what happened to Ahsoka's viewership in week 2? Share some of you I'm sure are laughing, and some of you I'm sure are horrified and sad. Let's talk it out. All right, share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.